Oh, hi, everybody. Ezra Levant is my name. They call me the Rebel Commander. And by they, I'm not quite sure. No one actually does that. They just say Ezra. I am the president of Rebel News, and I like to be part of the live stream. I used to do them every single day for an hour, but then I got busy. So I'm trying to get back to my roots. That's what this is. I'm kidding around. It's nice to be here. We have great talent for you all the time. I mean, one of my favorite people, Sheila, Gunn, Reid. Who else is on the show today? We got Sheila, and every day we got a different mix of talent. I want to show you a few things that I follow online. Tweets. That's how I get most of my news. I mean, I really don't subscribe to any newspaper other than the Epoch Times, which I highly recommend, by the way. I just want to show you a few things that pop up on my feed that I think are newsworthy. I'm going to start with Justin Trudeau, who when he goes overseas, diplomatic incidents will follow. Sometimes they're atrocious, like when he went to India. I think going from memory, he went for 8 days, 7 of which was a vacation, and he brought his tickle trunk of costumes. I remember when I was a kid, my parents had this little chest, and it was really fun because it was like an old-timey pirate's chest kind of thing, and those were the Halloween costumes. And you could look in there and dig around, and it was a very, I don't think we called it the tickle trunk. I don't even know what that word means, but it was just a trunk, like a big box with a lid. I think Trudeau has so many costumes. I think he has like a walk-in closet at home. I think he's got like his regular clothes closet, and then he's got like a costume section where he has, hidden away now is his blackface gear. He doesn't use that anymore. But he'll dress up in is it called a sari? No, I'm not sure what it's called. He'll dress up as if he is, in this case, a devout Sikh. We've seen him dress in a Muslim abaya, like he's a desert Bedouin. We've seen him dress up. I mean, it reminds me of Zelig, that old Woody Allen movie, where the main character, after which the movie is named, if he's with black people, suddenly his skin is black. If he's with Orthodox Jews, suddenly he's wearing the big hat and he has, curly hair. That's Justin Trudeau. He's an actor. So I think we've got to be lucky that when he went to London for the Queen's funeral, at least he didn't dress up like a beefeater with those big hats. At least he didn't, wear a kilt or something. At least he didn't go around doing a British accent. I mean, when he was in India and did namaste everywhere, it was super cringe, and I think it actually damaged our relationship with the world's largest democracy. But you knew in your bones that he would embarrass you. You knew it. I mean, when Justin Trudeau was new on the scene in 2015, his opening line, his party trick, like the guy's a bunch of party tricks. But if once you've seen them, it's not fun anymore. Like his socks. Hey, look, I got socks. I'm going to go to a NATO meeting, and I'm going to be the only leader of the NATO meeting talking about my socks. And it's going to be so childish, childlike, and wonderful, and people will be so impressed that I'm really real. Okay, so you do the socks thing once, and he has little tricks he does, party tricks really. But once you've seen it, it is immediately old and stale. So what did he do when he went to the United Kingdom? On the day of mourning, he went there for a funeral, but he brought this huge entourage with him. He brought a C-list celebrity. I don't know if you've even heard of her, named Sandra Oh. You just brought a celebrity along, but not even a celebrity. Like Sandra Oh is a celebrity. She's not. I mean, I guess I've heard her. Like, do you even know who I'm talking about? Can you put a picture of Sandra Oh on the screen? I don't think anyone knows who I'm talking about. What is she a well-known monarchist? Did she serve in some high station where she had a lot of interactions with the Queen? Like I know that Stephen Harper went, and some of the past prime ministers went, and that's great. But there's Sandra Oh. She's a C-list actress. I don't know if she's even working anymore. That's who you took to. Why? Just because you're lonely? Because I don't know. Because your wife isn't really hanging out with you or something. Why would you bring Sandra Oh with you? I don't know. I think he just wanted a celeb and no one else would go, or everyone else charged too much, and maybe Sandra O said, sure, I'll come along for free ride, free hotel, and free food or something. So he brought this entourage, and he's obviously bored because Trudeau doesn't give a damn about the monarchy, of course. He doesn't care about anything other than himself. I think, in fact, I would say he could do well in a mascot-type job like Governor General, except for that's not true, because the chief aspect of being a royal, or the Governor General, Lieutenant Governor, which are the deputies of the Queen, is service and duty. It's not actually posing for photos. The chief duties of a queen or a king are service and duty and putting others first. Justin Trudeau has none of that in him. So there he is in London. Sandra O has gone to hang out with her real friends. She's abandoned Trudeau. He's in his hotel lobby. I don't know how many thousands of dollars a night for the whole entourage. And, he wants to blow off some steam, but instead of being in his room, he goes down to the hotel bar and he becomes a dramatic actor. I showed you this the other day. Just play a clip of it. He's not quite as good as he thinks he is. But that's the thing about if you're in power or if you have wealth, everyone around you says, that's really good. No, seriously, I'm not just saying that because you're the Prime Minister and my boss and you were my free meal ticket here. I'm not just saying that. No, that was really good. That was really good. If you're ever not the Prime Minister again, I think you would really have Sandra O agree. Oh, Sandra O's not here. Where'd she go? Come on, Sandra. So this was held up in Canada because the song is Bohemian Rhapsody from Queen. Get it? So the state media in Canada said, it was his tribute to Queen Elizabeth. Yeah, going down to the bar in a T-shirt and singing Queen songs as a dramatic actor, that's your tribute to the Queen? I mean, could you be more North Korean in your style of journalism? But the British media weren't having it. Do you have that Daily Mail story? The Daily Mail, which is one of my favorite papers, it's one of the most candid papers out there, one of the most popular papers. I think it's got one of them. And their online website, one of the largest circulation in the world. Here we are in Canada, and we literally, that's the one. Drunk Canadian PM is slammed as a tone-deaf embarrassment for singing Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody at London hotel before Elizabeth II's state funeral. Wearing a T-shirt, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was standing over a piano during a sing-along with other members of his formal delegation at the Central London Hotel. Trudeau was heard hitting the infamous notes during the jollity, that's a great word, along with the lyrics, easy come, easy go. The Sing song happened on Saturday night at London's swanky Corinthia Hotel, just 2 days before billions tuned in to watch Queen Elizabeth II's funeral at Westminster Abbey on Monday morning. Oh, this is interesting. It's understood that Gregory Charles, a renowned musician from Quebec, was playing the keys while others joined in the tune on Saturday night. So did he bring, who didn't he bring? Was this another $1 million junket? We've done stories before about how much money he spends on booze alone. Some of those planes have $50,000 worth of food and drink on them. $50,000. How? Does everyone get a bottle of Dom Perignon or something? Unbelievable. But completely believable. And so it's also believable that after the story circulated, Trudeau was heckled on the streets of London. Here, I'll play a clip of that. I don't think you'll see this on the CBC. Take a look.
Canadians hate you, you bastard! You bastard Trudeau! Canadians hate your guts! You bastard! Trudeau! Fascist! Fascist bastard! Fascist! We hate you, son of a bitch! Get out of this country, you bastard!
Canadian Prime.
Well, there you have it. Justin Trudeau making friends wherever he goes. Like I said, an international incident. He simply can't go out with making a fool of himself, and unfortunately, because we're associated with him, he makes a fool out of us as well. I'm keeping my eye on the clock here. I want to talk about something, and Olivia, I don't know if you have a chance to find it. The video of Jagmeet Singh when Rebel News asked him questions at the 2021 leadership debate. But let me tell you what makes me think of that, because that was a year and a half ago. Jagmeet Singh, the submissive leader of the NDP, is that an oxymoron? You're a leader, but you couldn't be more submissive to Justin Trudeau. I mean, he literally will do anything Trudeau asks of him, which is necessary because Trudeau would not have a government without Jagmeet Singh's total submission. So Jagmeet Singh said that Pierre Poilievre should be ashamed of himself for not taking questions in the form of heckles from David Akin, a government broadcaster. And that shows that Pierre Poilievre is weak. Let's play this in order. Let's start with the David Akin heckle. Can we show the David Akin heckle just to remind people what we're talking about? Then let's show Jagmeet Singh's lecture today. And then let's show a flashback to when Jagmeet Singh stood there dumbly and refused to answer our questions when we posed them to him in the election. Yeah, so that's the one there. Pump this up. Just show people David Akin heckling Pierre Poilievre. This is incredible. Take a look.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your presence here today. Before I begin, let me just say that thank you very much. I'm being heckled here by thank you very much for your congratulations. Thank you very much for your questions. I'm going to begin my remarks now.
But will you take some questions afterwards?
Justin Trudeau is out of touch and Canadians are out of money. The cost of government is driving up the cost of living. $500 billion of inflationary deficits have bid up the cost of the goods we buy and the interest that Canadians pay. The cost for workers and businesses to produce the goods that we buy. On top of that, Trudeau proposes yet more spending to bid up costs even further. The more he spends, the more things cost. It is just inflation. Their homes and to buy a home in the very first place. The reason that so I mean, we have basically a liberal heckler who snuck in here today to. Well, apparently,
I'm the chief political correspondent of that organization.
Are you going to let me make my mistake?
Me from the guy who actually reported first on the Prime Minister breaking the law.
Yeah. Are you going to let me make my
mistake? We just like to ask a question. Say yes.
I've actually never seen you heckling the Prime Minister.
Before. Ask Minister Pierre back in the day.
The Prime Minister. Look, bottom line is this.
Are you going to take some questions at the end of this statement?
Yes, I'll be taking 2 questions at the very end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So I'm going to start my statement again.
I've really never seen anything like that. I just never have seen anything like that. If a Rebel News reporter had done that, they would have been tasered and escorted out by the RCMP. But of course, a Rebel News reporter, A, wouldn't do anything like that, and B, Rebel News reporters are kept out of the parliamentary precincts by David Akin and the cartel in the media party. They refuse to allow us accreditation into Parliament. So that is video number 1. David Akin being a bizarre heckler. I just have never seen that before. Video number 2 is Jagmeet Singh. He's appalled. He can't believe it. And so he lectured Pierre Poilievre how dare you, sir? How dare you call David Akin a heckler? That wasn't heckling. Here, take a look.
You know, I watched the video, and you know, from one perspective, it sounded like someone was interrupting him, And then when I saw the cutaway, and this is an important thing for people to do, sometimes you see one view and it looks like, okay, maybe it was some heckling. And then I saw the full view of what happened, and it was just a question, are you going to take questions? Or why aren't you taking questions? And it seemed a pretty normal thing, something that's happened to me before. People ask if I'm going to take questions. It seems like a pretty standard thing if I'm going to come before a group of folks, professionals, whose job it is to write the news, that they're going to ask me some questions about my positions. I kind of expect that. And the fact that instead of taking questions or saying, no, I'm not going to take questions, simple answer, to make it into an attack seemed a bit weak as a response. Like, why not just say no, or say, yeah, I'll take questions? And so it seemed like a bit of a weak approach to then somehow make it into someone's partisan political position. And I think it's an example of a lack of the strength to be able to stand up and say what you want and defend your position.
Yeah, so Jagmeet Singh, I mean, he's not weak. Definitely not. He's definitely a top in his relationship with Justin Trudeau. He's not being submissive at all. I mean, he's a very strong man. And if someone asks him tough questions, he's got the courage to answer it. Let me show you when our Rebel News reporters were at the last leadership debate, and we were only in there, like I say, not because the media party accredited us or Trudeau, but because we went to the Federal Court of Canada and said they're discriminating against us because we're conservative. And the court said, yeah, there's no reason that you should be let out. And they ordered the debate commission to accredit our people. Look at the cowardly lion, Jagmeet Singh, the same guy who just said, oh, Pierre Poilievre, why are you so weak? Why are you so scared? Why don't you talk to them? Here's Jagmeet Singh when we asked him questions. Take a look.
Alexandra pour Rebel News. Historiquement, le NPD s'est opposé aux grandes sociétés pharmaceutiques et aux sociétés milliardaires qui se sont enrichies grâce au blocage, comme Amazon et Walmart. Et le NPD était très attentif aux libertés civiles, y compris en étant pro-choix sous son propre corps. Pourquoi avez-vous embrassé les milliardaires de Big Pharma et abandonné votre philosophie de pro-choix?
Merci, mais je ne réponds pas aux questions de Rebel News. Merci.
Est-ce que vous pensez que c'est une option de ne pas répondre à un média juste parce que le fait que vous nous aimez pas?
Nous devons...
Merci beaucoup.
The question is from Rebel News.
Before you tell me that you're not going to answer my question, I just want to say that I'm not here representing myself or my company. I'm here representing millions of Canadians who have real questions for you, like the one my colleague Alexa just asked. People who you would marginalize. Is your message to them that they are second-class citizens?
Not at all, sorry.
Mr. Singh, the polls show that your party is between 15 and 20%. No party here on the stage tonight is even close to representing a majority of Canadians. This is an absolute divided country. Yet when conservative journalists like me ask you fair questions on behalf of Canadians, you insult us and refuse to answer a single word. You are like a child putting your hands over your ears. Do you really think you can become Prime Minister by trying to freeze out any Canadian who disagrees with you? In your own riding, you only got 38% of the vote. Is this how you treat the other 62% of people who disagree with you?
No, thanks so much.
Well, good for those ladies of Rebel News. And what a fool Jagmeet Singh is. You know, the word dumb, you call someone dumb, that's just a childish insult. But 100 years ago, the word dumb was more a medical term, or it was a condition where you couldn't speak. To strike someone would be deaf and dumb. Deaf, they couldn't hear; dumb, they couldn't speak. We don't really say that word anymore. But he is dumb in both senses of the word. He doesn't know how to handle three intelligent women asking independent questions. And he thinks it's just sort of smiling dumbly. No, I'm just not going to talk to Rebel News. Pretty embarrassing. I thought Sheila's points were spot on. Actually, all three of the journalists did a great job. I'm getting out of the chair now because I see my friend Tamara Ugolini on standby. And she put a great question to Justin Trudeau, who gave the same dumb answer. And I want to tell you this. We're not going to be stopped from asking our real questions. By the way, what David Akin did was not asking questions. It was heckling and interrupting a speech. We don't actually do that at Rebel News. We ask real questions, as you saw there. And I have no doubt that in the next election, when Rebel News applies for accreditation, I have no doubt that Trudeau's handpicked debates commission will ban us again. And I also have no doubt that we will go to court again and that we will win 3 for 3. And this time I think I myself might attend. And Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh, they answered 2 politicians. They answered 2 journalists. Journalists don't have to answer to them. We don't have to explain ourselves to them. We don't have to justify ourselves to them. Those cowards have to answer our questions. We're going to keep asking them. Enough ranting for me. Let me quickly talk about 2 super chats, and then I'll get out of the way as my friend Tamara, and I think Sheila's on today too. Super chats. Just going to try and find those, and then I'll get out of the way here. Canadian Mom 1997 says, Ezra, can you address this out of Israel and the jabs? They are caught on audio filming their cover-up. I'm sorry, I don't know the news you're referring to, so I don't know the clip or the audio. Maybe the rebels who will follow me in a minute haven't answered that. And then Alberta Dawn says, Muslim Association demanded the Alberta Human Rights Commissioner of Human Rights be fired for one sentence in a 13-year-old book review. Tyler Shandro fires the commissioner with basically no investigation. What next? I'm slightly familiar with this story. I would imagine that there's a wrongful dismissal suit there. Tyler Shandro, I'm shocked that he's still in cabinet. I think he's a great disgrace. I know him mainly for being the health minister who, you're not going to believe what I'm about to say. During the pandemic, he shut down ICU beds in Alberta. Everyone else in the world was trying to add intensive care unit beds. Tyler Shandro, the moron of the prairies, was closing them, was reducing the number of beds. And you could say, is he that stupid? Is he that incompetent? Or if you were really paranoid, you might say, he's trying to maintain a sense of crisis. He's trying to be able to say, oh my God, we're being overwhelmed. Yeah, that's because you just shut down 30 ICU beds, you absolute maroon. Tyler Shandro. I'm going to go do some work, but let me hand over the reins to Tamara Ugolini, and I think Sheila's on today. We'll have a quick ad while we do a quick change, and I'll hand you over to my friends, so see you later. Other than your friends at Rebel News, who are the best journalists in Canada? Well, obviously, it's Rex Murphy and Conrad Black. They're amazing. Conrad Black, the founder of the National Post, and its lead columnist, Rex Murphy, one of the wisest and funniest conservative critics in the country. Oh, I love both of those guys. Imagine spending dinner with not one, but both of them. Well, you can, or even just come to a discussion between the two men. Here's what I'm talking about. On September 22nd, the Democracy Fund is hosting an amazing evening with Conrad Black and Rex Murphy. It's going to start out with a wine and cheese reception. Then it's going to have the two men in conversation for 90 minutes. And then afterwards, for those who like, a private dinner with Conrad Black and Rex Murphy, and I'll be there too. And I don't know, I'm excited about it. There is going to be a lot of intellectual horsepower there. And 2 fascinating guys. If you're interested, you can find out all the details at the link below or at the democracyfund.ca/events. The prices start at just $11. If you're not in the Toronto area, you can watch online on Zoom the conversation. If you are in the Toronto area, come on out. You can buy a ticket just for the conversation between the two men. They're on stage. You can get a ticket for the wine and cheese beforehand, or come to the sit-down dinner afterwards, sort of the after party with Rex Murphy and Conrad Black, and I will be there. Apologies if I'm a deterrent for you buying a ticket. I'm kidding around. It's going to be a great night. I'll see you there. September 22nd, the Democracy Fund. Find out more at thedemocracyfund.ca/events or click the link below. Tickets start at $11 and they go up to $250 if you want that sit-down dinner with Rex and Conrad afterwards. The Democracy Fund, of course, being a CRA-registered charity, so your money goes towards a good cause. All right, we'll see you on September 22nd. That's thedemocracyfund.ca. Come for dinner with Rex Murphy and Conrad Black, and I'll be there too. Go to thedemocracyfund.ca/events. See you on September 22nd.
Oh, hey, Tamara, how's it going? That was kind of abrupt. I was expecting more of like an out from that ad, but boy, if you want to get smarter just by being in the room with some people, consider getting a ticket to that Democracy Fund event. That is a couple of really, really intelligent guys. Rex Murphy's like a walking, talking dictionary. Like the words that he uses and his turn of phrase, it's beautiful. It's lost art. And Conrad Black, he's just encyclopedia of Canadiana and the Commonwealth. So if you've got tickets to that event, good for you, because I'm very, very jealous. Tamara, how's it going though? You and I get to, we talk throughout the day, but we never like sit down, shoot the breeze and talk about the news. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, same. It was kind of just thrown last minute, as seems to be the way that things unfold sometimes. So likewise, excuse me, I'm excited to sit down, and we're a little bit short, right? We only have half an hour, I think, however long we're going to run things. We'll see how quickly we can get through some of the headlines. But definitely feeling that fall weather in the air today. Like it's a little bit breezy over where I am.
Breezy. It was like 6 degrees here yesterday, and I had to go work outside, and I was like, summer just like it was here last week, and then just like that, it's gone. Although it's not snowing, so that's different, because sometimes we do get snow kind of sometimes even in the first week of September here. So I don't know.
Oh, gross.
It's gross. That's why I like to work outside when it's nice. Like I'll take my computer outside and work. Anyways, you did say that we are tight on time, so I should shut up and we'll get to the first story of the day. The first one we want to talk about, and I think this is right up Tamara Ugolini's alley. She's our COVID statistics nerd, and I mean that in the most affectionate of ways. Medical assistance in dying option has been removed from the Saskatchewan Health Authority's 811 healthcare menu. To some, it might imply that suicide is an option, health minister says. You think? Like it actually is an option. The government offers it to you. And what the left told us was a slippery slope fallacy. It's happening. Like when we said, this is a bad idea to be having the government authorize suicide. We said, it's going to be offered to the mentally ill. Mental illness is going to become a terminal illness. It's going to be offered to the inconvenient, like veterans who are experiencing a PTSD episode. But that's happening. And I think it's really ironic that the same governments that have a suicide hotline are also on the flip side offering you medical assistance in suicide. Like pick a lane, please, people.
Well, and you're also kind of capitalizing and optimizing people who may be in a very vulnerable state of mind and putting this thought and ideation further into their mind. I mean, it muddies the water completely with ethics. And I also found it really interesting in this particular article that it was after Maxime Bernier featured a recording of what the various options were when you call 811 on the Saskatchewan Health Authority's hotline. So, it's like press 1 for COVID related illness stuff, or press 2 for poison control, or if you need a psychiatric assessment. And then it just is right there. And then potentially in this moment of dire weakness, press 5 to begin that process to start essentially committing suicide. And so I just think that there are so many different ways to reinvigorate the healthcare system than pouncing on people who are, again, in this state of mental incapacity in many instances, I would imagine. And there's so many people who are feeling neglected and abandoned by the medical establishment and our socialized medical system as a whole, that they literally think that potentially committing suicide through this medical assisted dying is a better option than trying to seek appropriate and timely medical care.
Yeah, you have a society that has forcibly isolated very vulnerable people, exacerbating mental health crises. Then we've tossed opioids in on top of that, in job loss, which is, I've seen statistics over the years, and it's over and over again. Financial crises are what forces men into suicide. So it's, for men, it's not mental illness. It is the depression caused by financial crises. And men commit suicide at a far greater rate than women. So when you see the economic catastrophe of inflation and job loss caused by the pandemic, it's men, vulnerable men, who are dialing up this number and saying, you know what, dial 5 for your lethal injection. Like, these people are just dogs who have a illness that is a little bit too difficult to treat. Like, it's just gross how we're treating these people. But this is, as you say, this is the end result of socialized medicine. And then you throw like net zero healthcare on top of this, and they're starting to calculate whether or not you're worth the carbon expenditure. So just dial 5 to meet your maker.
Well, and also I wanted to touch on the fact that homelessness, the insane cost of housing and shortage of housing, people have reached out and said things like, I can't find anywhere to live, and so I might as well die. And it's just absolutely insane.
This actually happened, I think it was in British Columbia. An elderly lady couldn't find housing. So she's like, you know what? I'm just going to pull the pin. Is this where we've driven people? It's gross.
And how better spent would the funding be than on this program, which I imagine is probably a very cost-effective way to, for lack of a better word, unfortunately, cull a large part of your population. How better would that funding be spent on things like housing and righting the wrongs of the pandemic response plan and these policies that devastated people's mental health and just contributed, like you already said, to the opioid crisis? Just absolutely crazy that the government thinks that this is a more viable option than actually correcting some of the things that are plaguing society.
This should scare the daylights out of the boomers, by the way, because we've got an aging population and a collapsing healthcare system. This is meant for you, probably, and not for me and Tamara. So you should be very, very worried. I think they're just going to show, just so you know what's going on, Tamara, that some of the smaller chats, they're just going to show them on air instead of us stopping to read them. In case you have the inclination or desire to stop and read them like I do. I like to read them all, but we really don't have time today. Let's hit an ad break, and then let's go into this thing that if you want to get punched out by me in public, do this. Have me catching you do this, and I will. You'll be lucky if you get my purse across the side of your head, but it could be worse for you. Anyway, let's roll that ad break, and then we'll talk about that.
Well, the remains of 215 children have been found in a mass grave in Canada.
Do you want to get closer to the truth about what was actually buried at Kamloops Indian Residential School last year? So do I. That's why the Rebels are doing a live screening in Calgary at Canyon Meadows Cinemas, and we want you to join us. We'll be there to watch this documentary with you, meet and greet you, and answer any questions that you have. I can't wait to see you. There's more info below.
Okie doke.
I'm so excited for that documentary. I'm just...
it's wonderful.
My kids are also anxiously waiting. We talked a little bit about, in school, they learn about these issues front and center. And so we spoke a little bit about how it's not all the truth. So they're going to actually watch it with me when it's released, the older ones.
Yeah, the older ones. I that's one of these things that I think school teaches kids too early about.
Yes.
I don't know. Anyways, let's move on to this next story because I would...
Yeah, deep breaths, Sheila, deep breaths.
I would be off the rev limiter if somebody did this to me. So in Edmonton, CTV News has a story. The headline is, "Your gas guzzler kills." we'd be finding out what is dangerous for your health pretty quick if somebody did this to me. Edmonton woman finds warning on her SUV along with deflated tires. And this is out of the UK. And you can tell that this is just a UK form letter by the very British way they spell tires. But a vigilante trend of deflating SUV and pickup tires in the name of environmental protection appears to have arrived in Edmonton, with one victim calling it frustrating. I would use more colorful language. Brandy Rintoul found 2 tires on her Honda SUV. So like an economical little SUV, by the way, deflated Sunday, along with a note apparently from the tire extinguishers. I would be extinguishing people. Similar flyers have been found on vehicles with deflated tires in Victoria and Kitchener. SUVs are unnecessary. Oh, and pure vanity. Oh, really? The note says we are taking actions into our own hands because governments and politicians will not. Rintoul pumped up her tires and she says she's not changing vehicles, but will probably install security cameras on her home in the McQueen neighborhood. This is the part that gets me. The vandals don't know why people pick the vehicle they drive. It's not necessarily that I picked this because it's a gas guzzler or whatever. My sister and I do a lot of stuff together, our 2 families on the weekends and stuff. So one of the reasons I bought this is because it fits her family and mine. Rather than taking 2 vehicles to Lake, we take one. So this lady actually carpools. She saves carbon emissions in her SUV. EPS, Edmonton Police Service, did confirm that tires on 13 vehicles were slashed in the Delwood area of Northwest Edmonton on Sunday night. So this is kind of a nicer neighborhood, with no reports of any notes being left there. I hope I never see you. Hope I never catch you myself. All I have to say about that says Frank Castiglione. Sorry, I butchered your name, Frank, but I like your attitude, while putting a new rubber on his 4x4 pickup. If they're just going to let the air out with no damage, go ahead. Every day I'll pump it up in the morning, but don't puncture the sidewalls. This, I would be difficult to contain myself. I do drive an SUV. I actually have 2 SUVs.
Same.
I have, my husband drives a big, huge pickup for work because he works in the oil patch. This is Alberta and farmers. But am I frozen, Tamara? Okay, I've unfrozen.
No, you're good.
Also, I'm also on rural roads. I don't live on pavement. Sometimes they don't plow the roads here for days when we get a snowstorm, and it's Alberta. I'm due for a snowstorm yesterday. So I have aggressive tires on the vehicles. My 16-year-old daughter drives one of the SUVs. My husband has aggressive tires on his vehicle because he's off on like lease roads in the oil patch. They don't, like this lady points out, they don't know why you drive the vehicle that you drive. And this is a free country, so it's none of these people's businesses. If they want to take their kids to hockey on the front of their handlebars on their stupid bike, that's their business, not mine. But they could have stranded a woman and her small children yesterday or whenever these idiots did this. Tamara, you have a little guy at home. You have actually a gazillion kids at home. Imagine walking out.
Yeah, we have a brood.
Yeah, you do. So you're walking out and you have your hockey team worth of children and you're trying to get them all into your SUV from somewhere. Say you're visiting. They don't know even if this is the homeowner's vehicle, but the tires are slashed. Now it's hot. Well, not in Alberta, but it could have been when they did this earlier in the summer. And you've got little ones hot. You can't get them home. And not only that, they've just handed a family that they don't know their economic situation. They just know the car that they think they drive. They've just handed these people a very expensive bill. I admit I have expensive, aggressive tires on my vehicle. Partly because I like how they look, but partly out of necessity. And so if someone walks out and slashes my tires, not only is it difficult for me now to get a matching tire to replace that, but it's a huge cost that a family doesn't need. But these people, oh, by the way, throwing tires in the tire pile down at the dump, that's your solution to fighting climate change? Good job, guys. Good job. Mother Nature,
that was going
you.
to be my exact point, is that this is so wasteful. And you want to talk about carbon emissions. Well, how much more emissions now are you using to replace that tire that was perfectly fine and all good to be used for however more length of time. And now you're just having to bring on a new tire and waste resources to to replace what these people have just in their own self-loathing probably decided to just arbitrarily go around and vandalize people's property. I mean, for us, we have an SUV because it fits everyone in together. And yeah, if we didn't have an SUV, we would have to take 2 vehicles just to fit everyone into the vehicle. We've actually maxed out our seating capacity. So I'm like, do we need a bus? Because by the time you load a stroller in there, any sort of cargo, lunch pails, bags, there isn't much room left actually in our large SUV. We have a 7-seater. And so I wonder if families start driving, the large families start driving buses around, or what about, for instance, even if you go to the farmers market, there's farmers there that have their cube vans and they're driving around all of their produce and they're feeding the local community. I mean, what spares them from being the next target of these climate radicals? These are really people who have been radicalized by the climate alarmism, trying to take matters into their own hands with no real understanding of what they're actually doing and how this actually negatively impacts the environment when you have to purchase new tires when your other ones were perfectly fine.
Yeah, this is Canada. We're very sparsely populated. We're very spread out. I kind of like it that way. I don't like these compacted cities where people are stacked on top of each other. I don't think that's good for human health. But these people don't realize that most of us don't live on a bike path. Like, I have kids. If I walk past a Costco, $400 just jumps out of my wallet and groceries appear in my trunk. And so, I live to get a jug of milk. It's like a 40-minute round trip for me to the local corner store. I need a vehicle that's reliable. I can't live the bike lifestyle. I have children. I am not one of these self-sterile
of the Canadian population. And for myself as well, I mean, my kids catch a bus to school in the morning and I even have to drive them to the bus because it's not just out front of our house because of the way that, houses are laid out in the more rural setting. And I'm not even that rural, but we have lived previously, 45 minutes out from a grocery store and on those back roads that are dirt, gravel roads that aren't plowed, like you said, for a few days after a large snowstorm. So how else do you expect people to get to and from their necessities when that's just the nature of the country that we live in? This is also just feigned ignorance that they can't recognize that some people have different necessities and needs than their own.
It's interesting. They want you to shop local and eat local, and then they slash the tires of your local farmer. Like, it's just ridiculous. Let's move on to this next thing because it is on the same vein. And again, perfect. Because as I said on Twitter, the heart wants what the heart wants. And in this case, his heart wanted meat. And he should have admitted to that. So the Beyond Meat chief operating officer was arrested for biting a man's nose. The fake meat executive, whoever wrote this, good job. The fake meat executive was arrested for ripping the flesh off a Subaru owner's nose following a college football game in Fayetteville. Beyond Meat chief operating officer and former Tyson Foods executive safety council member. He's on the safety council. He's biting people's noses. Doug Ramsey, 53, was arrested September 17th on charges of terroristic threatening and third-degree battery. It happened in a parking garage near Razorback Stadium shortly after Arkansas beat Missouri State 38-27. I like how we put the score in there. So anyway, it's basically a road rage incident that ended up with the COO biting the man's face. And I just thought, that's a pretty carnivore thing to do. But
and I mean, the situation
is this what all that like Beyond Meat sausage does to you? I hope not.
Drives you crazy and makes you want to, I guess, indulge in your fellow humans. I think that the whole situation obviously escalated very quickly. I mean, to just be in some minor altercation in a parking garage to all of a sudden you're drawing blood and eating flesh. I can't even.
You slash my tires and I might get like that though. You slash my tires and I might bite your face off. But also I noticed. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. I mean, I'm just going to reiterate the fact that this person is a former Executive Safety Council member. I mean, that is very concerning and alarming that this person apparently, who's supposed to be or previously in charge of health and safety, is going around biting. Like, how unhinged do you have to become and be internally to bite someone's nose off? Oh, it reminds me of that. What was it where that man on that overpass, I think it was somewhere in the States,
salts.
remember? Yeah, the bath salt phenomenon. Oh, it just reminds me of that to a lesser extent. And it's really just gross and creepy. And what kind of person would go about doing something like this? I guess when that's what the Beyond Meat burgers do to one's inner cravings.
I noticed in here there's a little bit of hypocrisy, and it sort of ties back into the last thing. Because a lot of the reasons they want us to eat this like fake meat is partly for the animals. So you're supposed to sacrifice your human health for the animal health. No, thanks. I'm the top of the food chain. My family's most important to me. We're going to eat the animal. But secondarily, they say, oh, it's better for the environment. Animal agriculture is bad for the environment. To which I say, okay, so just like mowing down swaths of the rainforest to plant your kale, that's good for the environment. Okay. But anyway, they say one of the reasons Beyond Meat markets itself to people to eat their processed garbage is because it's good for the environment. But as you'll note here, Ramsey, the nose biter, owns a Bronco. You know what? Fine vehicle choice. I'm a little jealous. But that's an SUV and not, I don't think he was driving the Sport Edition. I bet he's got the big boy. Again, good for him. But I'm reliably told by the environmentalist movement that I'm supposed to eat this Beyond Meat garbage to save the planet. And here we have the COO, the deranged nose-biting COO, allegedly, is driving a Bronco. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you brought up, something I didn't myself notice. But there's just, when you look a little bit deeper beyond the surface, these hypocrisies are glaring. And I'm so glad that you pointed that out, because how perfectly fitting in with the narrative that all of the globetrotters and the ones who want to instill their rules onto the little guys are at the same point in time just flouting them.
Me and these
I hope this
people
person
are not
gets
so
help.
different. Yeah, we're not so different after all. The more I think about it, I'm like, okay, so you have an SUV. You also like to chew meat. Me too. And you got a little anxious when somebody got too close to your vehicle. Now, I wouldn't have gone as far as overreacting, but I feel like this guy could be a bit of a kindred spirit if he weren't trying to snow people by tricking them into eating highly processed, nutritionally deficient garbage and assaulting people in a parking lot. But I feel like we have some things in common. Maybe we should go to the ad break before I try some of that Beyond Meat sausage. Let's hit the ad break, and then we'll go to this latest story about COVID grievances in Alberta.
Hey folks, check out the newest arrival to the Rebel News store. Yes, F is for Fidel and F is for father. I mean, could it be? Yes, half this photo, the colored half, is Justin Trudeau. The black and white half is a young Fidel Castro. Wait now, or is it vice versa? It's so confusing. I'm a huge Forensic Files fan. Wouldn't it be great if we could have piece of Justin's DNA and a piece of Fidel's DNA and put the rumor to bed once and for all? But in the meantime, we'll just have to walk around wearing this shirt, hinting at a great Canadian conspiracy. Or is it? In any event, if you want to get this shirt, folks, go to the Rebel News store and check this out. Type in our new discount code, that's SUMMER, SUMMER, and if you buy 2 unisex t-shirts, you get an additional one for free. What a deal. Like I said, Justin Trudeau, Fidel Castro, as they used to say on the ABC detergent ads. Can you tell the difference? I can't tell the difference.
I think we have to end that summer code. We're going to be changing that, I think, to the fall. So
yeah,
hurry up
and
get it while supplies last.
Every time he cuts to that X-Files music, I burst out laughing. I don't know why. I know it's coming. I'm waiting for it, but I just can't contain it. It's just so funny. Let's move on to this latest story. It's in the Edmonton Journal, but it's a reprint from the National Post because in Alberta, our media landscape is completely homogenous, save for us and the Western Standard. So COVID-19 grievances, conspiracy theories drove extremist narratives in Alberta, Canada, says CSIS. Okay, so there's a difference between extremist narratives and extremist violence. And one is a thing that you think and one is a thing that you do. And this feels like thought crimes. But anyway, grievances and conspiracy theories related to the COVID-19 pandemic continue to drive ideologically motivated violent extremist narratives. You notice they don't say acts or violence. They just... You're guilty of thinking things and justifications for political violence. But there hasn't been political violence, at least from the so-called COVID conspiracy theorists, people who think maybe vaccines don't stop the spread, or maybe your mask doesn't work, and CSIS is like extremist. But anyways, it goes on to say Canada's National Intelligence Agency doing the hard work of turning their focus onto grandmothers who want to see their grandkids and want to go to church, cited COVID-19 grievances and conspiracy theories are driving extremist narratives throughout Alberta and Canada, blah, 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 blah. Let's skip ahead. The documents from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, marked as top secret, I feel like this is for a stunt, and for Canadian eyes only, were acquired via an access to information request for terrorist threat assessments in Alberta between March 2020 and January 2022. These people redact everything right down to names and email addresses. Pages and pages of innocuous garbage they redact just to annoy me. And they're going to hand over willingly things that say top secret for Canadian eyes only. I don't believe it. They marked this top secret for theater. Anyways, let's keep going. The records show concern. Well, great. I don't care if politicians are concerned. Records show concern over ideologically motivated violent extremists, particularly around opposition to coronavirus-related public health measures that the agency claimed was driving what it termed anti-government threat environment. This is Alberta. We don't like the government, any government. That's just how we are. We are ungovernable. That's not ideologically motivated terrorism. It's the ethos of the place in which I live. It's why we live here. It's why people move here. Grievances. Oh, so grievances. So being annoyed. That's also, they obviously being annoyed, terrorists. And conspiracy theories, again, what's a conspiracy theory now except an early adopter of a good idea that's going to turn out to be true in 6 months, related to the COVID-19 pandemic, continue to drive ideologically motivated extremist narratives in Canada and justifications for political violence. The report from November 2021 reads names and specific groups and individuals were redacted. Now, I am not all that sure about any ideologically motivated violence related to the COVID-19 pandemic, except for the one big notable one. Like the convoy didn't commit any violence. Violence was committed against the convoy. They were also smeared and blamed. They had their bank accounts seized. They were treated as terrorists, but they never were. However, there was that guy who allegedly drove his SUV, another SUV driver on the left, drove his vehicle into the convoy protesters in Winnipeg and clipped off a bunch of them. Why? Obviously radicalized by the mainstream media and their constant demonization of the convoy as violence. Again, I say, these are people who have been waiting their whole life to punch a Nazi, except they've never actually seen a Nazi because the supply does not meet the demand, and they've never punched anybody in their whole life. So then this is how you take a car. This is how you take a club to people. It's because you know that you are a Nazi fighter, but there just aren't any Nazis. But when the TV tells you that those people who disagree with you, they're the Nazis, go get them, they do. And when they do, everybody sort of walks away from their responsibility in creating these crypto Nazis that don't exist.
And then blames the people who were attacked for the act of violence that was perpetrated by the media and elected officials against them. And I found it interesting here that the only actual violence that's sourced in this article is, well, they stress a need for heightened security for public officials, citing the murder of British MP David Amis, who was fatally stabbed during an open availability with constituents on October 15th, 2021. I'm not at all familiar with that case. This is actually the first time that I have heard about this. But I have to reiterate that the thought crime and questioning the government and having your elected representatives not actually represent you in the House or at Queen's Park or in their elected the places where they're elected to represent the people, when they fail to do that job, that's when people get increasingly upset and start to question and wonder and push back against, here we've seen with COVID, the narrative, quote unquote. And so this is the politicians' own shortfallings, is that they failed to adequately represent their constituents and bring their concerns forward and represent them in the House. And when they get upset and frustrated and start to voice that and heckle and meet them out at places where they may be frequenting and yell at them, then all of a sudden this is like ideologically motivated violent extremism. No, these are just frustrated people trying to be heard after being ignored and disregarded for the better part of 2+ years.
Yeah, there's a crazy line in here. It says, we assess that some anti-authority. Oh, that's illegal now? You're going to arrest all the teenagers then, I guess. We assess that some anti-authority and anti-government ideologically motivated violence adherents. So they don't say perpetrators, they say adherents. People, these are just people who are anti-authority. In Canada, will attempt to use public health restrictions to incite others to violence. Now, I read that and I say, yeah, you did. You incited people to assault Maxime Bernier. So the weaponization of the COVID restrictions was done through the fear of telling people that if you see somebody who isn't following the stupid arrows on the floor of the grocery store, they are grandma killers. And what would you do if someone were trying to kill your grandma? Well, I would, you know what? I might get a little violent if someone were trying to kill my grandma. And so these people end up being radicalized by the TV and the rhetoric and the demonization. They're the ones committing violence, not the other side where the people are like, I just want to be left alone. That I'm anti-authority because please leave me alone. Those people are not the radicals. It's the ones who are, for example, throwing eggs at Maxime Bernier. And I think it's very interesting that happened in September of 2021. But that violence against Bernier is not cited in this November 2021 report from CSIS. The worst they could find, because they weren't looking, was violence that happened to a politician in the UK for some reason. They skipped right over the violence happening to politicians in Canada because it doesn't fit the narrative, because the wrong people were doing it.
Yeah, they had to search really hard for that one instance too. It sounds like, and I'm going to look a little bit further into what exactly transpired there. But I imagine, not to justify that, that's very extreme, and I would never condone or justify any of that. But how was this a case where this gentleman was no longer representing his constituents? And I think that politically that has to be called out more. Not taking and being a violent, but calling out and recognizing, hey, I was wrong, and admit the wrongdoings and the shortfallings of what you have done politically. We see politicians just skirting issues 24/7, not taking any accountability. And that's when people start to get frustrated and fed up, and it ends up radicalizing individuals. But as you've said, Sheila, it's the other side, though, when it's constant fear purveying from the media and the politicians, and they all pile on and radicalize. If you see someone not wearing a mask, they're a domestic terrorist and we better get them.
We've decided in this country that bouncy castles, street cleanups, and open air soup kitchens are sedition. So it is not a leap for like I said, for these people who have punched Nazis in their Twitter bio, who've never seen a Nazi in their real life, say, "Oh, the TV told me those people are Nazis. Okay, great. I'm going to go hurt them." That's how you get from just a random internet loser to the guy punching you in the grocery store. But the media glosses over the fact that this ideologically motivated violence is coming from the left to the right and not the right to the left. How many people even remember the shooting of Steve Scalise? The man barely survived. Charity baseball game, 2017. All we heard about was how Donald Trump's rhetoric was going to weaponize people, but it was a Bernie bro who showed up and shot Republican Steve Scalise and almost killed him at a baseball game in Virginia. 6 people were shot. Nobody ever talks about it. That was ideologically motivated. A Bernie bro shot a Republican, and Steve Scalise has to sit and listen to the Democrats complaining about how the Republicans are weaponizing people to commit violence. Show me where. Show me where. Anyway.
Exactly. And this article doesn't do any of that anywhere. Okay, let's get into our last topic because we're already 4 minutes over.
Yeah.
And
we should get into this one. I know, Olivia, you want to wrap up the show, but we should get into this one because I believe this is ours.
Well, and because it also shows how much the politicians spread and espouse misinformation, which leads to the frustration of their constituents and their populations. And so in this article, there's a clip here. So first and foremost, this is about the quarantine hotels that the Canadian government continues to institute for all travelers coming into the country. And they're essentially detention camps. I mean, this reads like a jail system. But in the fall of, 2020, this was called a conspiracy theory that there was going to be these COVID internment camps. And Trudeau spread some rhetoric that this is conspiracy theory and this mis and disinformation. The government has to work so hard to conquer it and fight against it. And then lo and behold, here we are. We still have these quarantine hotels happening in Canada at our expense with very little occupancy. So the article itself is titled, Feds Still Spending Millions on Nearly Empty COVID-19 Quarantine Hotels. And it gets into where they're located. So, Kelowna, Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton, city centers. And the daily room rates range between $49 and $220 per night. So the cost to Canadian taxpayers for the federal government to procure the rooms is likely close to $210,000 per night, or just under $1.5 million per week. And toward the bottom of the article, the contracts for these quarantine facilities with the federal government began in June 2020, and the contract will remain in place until March 2023. So how's that for conspiracy theory and mis and disinformation that our overlord, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, tried to discredit this as being?
These are still in the books for another 6 months. The articles from Western Standard, however, when there was a order paper question from not too long ago that said that they were still procuring these. So, and we wrote that up here at Rebel News. So, I think that was maybe 3 months ago when we did that, and it was a hint that the quarantine restrictions are never going away. That's why we have these quarantine hotels, is to comply with the quarantine restrictions. And it was like, we were told it was a conspiracy theory. There's no such thing as COVID jails until we put our alumnus, Cian Bexty, into one. We sent him out of the country and we put him into the sausage maker of the COVID jail system because we wanted to show people beyond anecdotes what really happens firsthand. So we put a journalist through it, and they told us it didn't happen. It was very sciencey, by the way. I checked it out because I drove to Calgary to check out the hotel that Kian was in. And the first, second, and fourth floors are just regular hotel. So what's a 3-star hotel in Calgary or 2.5-star hotel in Calgary? About $170 a night, 155, 170. So that's your room rate on the first, second, and fourth floors. But if you're staying in the COVID jail on the third floor, where you can't get off unless somebody takes you, it was like an enormous inflated rate, up to $2,000 a week. You know?
Well, the hotel industry also had to make up for the unprecedented shutdown and lockdown that directly affected all of their entire business model.
Yep. So it was just very odd. I think it was, for some people, they were paying up to $2,000 for 3 nights in one of these like 2.5-star hotels, where if you were otherwise a person who would stay at this hotel, you'd be paying, $150 a night. It was just a big scam. This is
and I think
meals.
that's under the guise of your meals being provided. And look at those meals. And we heard stories of people just being denied their medication while in the care of these quarantine facilities. They were denied their medication. They didn't actually get any outside times. There was smokers who weren't being allowed out to have cigarette breaks. The food just looked horrendous. If you even got food, right? There was so many cases where people weren't even being fed. And a quote from this Western Standard article, it says right here, and this is, tell me that this is not jail. Those staying in the facilities will be provided with transportation to the hotels, access to 24-hour support and regular health assessments, 3 meals a day, Wi-Fi access, and phones for outbound calls, and regular supervised outdoor health breaks.
Time in the yard, as they call in prison. Yeah. That's what they call prison. That's time in the yard. And
single file now.
It was like prison right down to the sexual assaults, because there were reports of women who were being sexually assaulted and sexually harassed in these places. And you're basically confined. You can't get away. It's
absolutely horrendous. And our Prime Minister just tried to gaslight everyone who tried to sound the alarm on this unfolding, that they were conspiracy theorists spreading mis and disinformation and contributing to a demise of trust in our institutions and our democracy. So thank you for that, Justin Trudeau.
One more interesting point there, and I like to make it all the time because I covered the COVID jail constitutional challenge. And it came out in that challenge that if you presented yourself at the airport with signs and symptoms of COVID, now you didn't have to test positive, but if you were like, or like, I'm hot, I have a fever, and people like me, I don't do well on the tarmac waiting to get off the plane because I'm claustrophobic. So that's when I could like feel my temperature rising. But if you present at the airport with a runny nose or whatever, you did not have to go to the COVID jail. The COVID jails were for healthy people. If you presented at the airport with signs and symptoms of COVID, they told you to get home, get out of the airport immediately, and quarantine at home and isolate for 14 days. If you were healthy, you would have to quarantine until your COVID test came back like 72 hours later or whatever. So the COVID jails, they were only confining the healthy people by and large at the COVID jail. Secondarily, a lot of people who were healthy who ended up being confined in the COVID jail caught COVID in the jail a lot of times from the people who worked there, because there was no testing of the people who worked there. So you're perfectly healthy. You come back to Canada, you're like, no, I'm feeling fine. They're like, oh no, we have to wait for your results to come back off to the COVID jail where you could catch COVID because you're waiting over there with people who may or may not test positive.
In confined close quarters with the shared HVAC system and no access to fresh air. So science.
Yeah, why do you think flu spreads when it gets cold outside? A lot of it has to do with the fact that we're all inside together. And so that's exactly what they did when they were doing this. They're like, okay, well, let's just hold you up all together in this place, even though you're perfectly healthy, and we'll just see what happens.
Hope for the best. Well, thank you everyone at home for joining us a little bit late.
We have
13
2
minutes
chats.
over. Oh,
we have 2 chats. Yeah, we've got two chats. One from Fraser McBurney, fight the fines recidivist, the most prolific protester in all of Hamilton, with an affinity for caps lock, because he's excited. Not that he's yelling at me. He gives us $6 and he says, "Freedom Rally from Hamilton. What a wonderful event. Everyone had a good time. The one bad thing that happened was someone used a marker pen on one of my signs. Haha, the mess came off with nail polish remover with acetone and the sign lives on. Thank you for your life tips." Fraser, I noticed only Rebel News covered the rallies. Yes, we did. We still have reports coming out. I think we have Alexa's coming out today as well. So that's great. And Udibursy or Judibursy, maybe next time, can you, in your chat, tell me if that's like a Y or a hard J? I'm not sure. But anyways, the problem is that politicians forget that they are elected by the people, for the people, not themselves. Yeah. Well, that stuff comes
Agreed.
from the top down. That's an attitude set from the top down, I think. I think that's everything now, Tamara. You want to wrap up the show?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for everyone joining us at home. Thank you for your super chats, and stay tuned. Join us here again tomorrow. Maybe not us exactly, but some of your favorite rebels. We never know what's going to happen on a live stream. So stay tuned again tomorrow, same time and place, and we will see you over there.
This tragedy was not a random act of fate. It was the result of a string of failings stretching back more than a decade. The question that Chief Wally Burns asked when he learned about the perpetrator's criminal history should be ringing in the ears of everyone in the House. Quote, why was this guy released when he was so dangerous? I also agree with Brian Burns, whose wife and son were killed, when they said, there needs to be some kind of an inquiry. The families need answers. As a husband and a father, I can only imagine the grief that Brian Burns must be feeling today. I can only imagine the sense of deep betrayal he must feel when he thinks about the callous negligence of our criminal justice system that let this violent criminal out to recommit offenses again and again, not just in this case, but over more than a decade. This perpetrator, who I am deliberately not naming, had been charged with over 120 crimes in 47 cases over the last 14 years. He'd been convicted 59 times. Likely more, but his youth record is sealed. At least two of the previous victims, those previous victims, were also victims of the most recent violence. His in-laws, Earl Burns, who died, and Joyce Burns, who was wounded. The first time, back in 2015, he was charged with attempted murder, but he was allowed to plead guilty to a lesser offense and was only sentenced to 2 years less a day in prison. It has also been reported that he assaulted the mother of his children 5 times